And happy podcasting day, everybody. Zeb, Ross, myself, we're back off the bye, ready to talk Seahawks, ready to talk Russell Wilson, ready to talk Aaron Rodgers, OBJ, Pete Carroll, all the things. Welcome, everyone.
Overload. That's an overload.
We might run out of things to talk about, but it might be like a 5-hour podcast.
Well, you're just going to let me talk?
We won't stop you. This has now been changed to the Ross Unfiltered podcast.
Nice.
It's been a while, though. It's been a while, so you might have a lot of things to talk about, right?
Yeah, there's a few things to talk about. There's a few things going on.
I feel like few is a generous term because there's a lot of things, and there's a lot of Seahawk things wrapped around that, and non-Seahawk things kind of being brought into it. And it all happened like on the bye week when we didn't have the podcast. So lots to think about and talk about for sure.
What do you want to talk about first?
What's
on your mind?
We have a couple that are like scheduled for the topics, but let's talk about a few things that aren't scheduled. So we should talk about the Jaguars game. We should talk about Odell Beckham Jr. and what's going on with him. We have a couple players returning. Dee Eskridge is playing again. He's practicing. Chris Carson, I thought, was dead, but he's apparently practicing again. There's quite a few things, and we don't even have those scheduled as like dedicated topics, but I think we got to talk about them at least a little bit, right?
The Chris Carson thing's a little weird, isn't it? Because they sort of implied one week that he was done for the season, and then you start wondering, is this a career thing? And then about 5 days later, Pete Carroll's like, yeah, we expect to have him back after the bye. A little bit weird to me. A little bit weird.
I think so. I mean,
because doctors don't usually change a prognosis that much that fast. That feels weird to me.
I mean, I know that there was definitely talk that Chris Carson was like the Seahawks did Chris Carson a solid by signing to a ridiculously friendly contract because they knew we've only got like 5 games in you because you're like about to fall apart.
I mean, is that what it is? Is that like we don't mind signing you for this much for the year because we know you're only going to play a third of it anyway? So we're really getting you for like $1.5 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look back at his deal, it was pretty crazy. I mean, I think it's weird that it's taken Dee Eskridge this long to come back to practice. It's crazy to think that Chris Carson, all of a sudden, his prognosis from where it was before he even went on IR to where it is now is almost like it's like he got injured like last week, but it was like a minor thing, and like they just took him out because we were just killing the Jags and we didn't need him. Like it's almost as if that's what it seems like.
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think they were joking, and I don't think the people were lying when they talked about the released, leaked stuff saying this isn't a Cam Chancellor type situation, but it's not awesome. Like this could just be the whole season right here. Bam.
I kind of feel like though before it even got to the IR, it was basically Cam Chancellor, but with Chris Carson, like it's just the type of style that he plays and where that injury is, it's just not going to get better, so he's got to shut it down and he's basically done. Like that's where I thought it was going to, and to hear that it's not that, it's almost like the rug getting pulled out from under you, I feel.
I kind of feel like it still is that kind of thing, that the swelling's down and they're hoping it just doesn't take as much. I feel like anytime his neck takes a bruising or a beating, that's just going to swell up, and it's going to be... Is it the canal in the bone where the nerves run down? Is it that kind of thing again? I don't know exactly. I haven't got the exact details, but I don't know. I feel like you have to be prepared. I think you have to take into consideration basically Chris Carson is like always one hit away from being out of the game from now on. And I think you have to take that into consideration when building the roster, when giving him his contract. It seems like they did. And yeah, I mean, you saw the Titans go out and they signed Devonte Foreman. I mean, who everybody else had forgotten about, and Adrian Peterson because
Adrian Peterson, he got a touchdown in his game.
He did.
So
10 carries, 21 yards, but did get a touchdown. And then he called out the running back room in general. He's the one who averaged 2.1 yards a carry, but he actually called out the whole running back room. I'm like, he said, I think we left some yards on the field, maybe myself included. I'm like, dude, you were the one who left the most, but whatever.
I mean, if anyone has the pedigree to come out of the blue and say, look, man, the running backs did not do their part, maybe I was a part of that. Adrian Peterson's got some history to stand upon, but yeah, it is got
a little bit of cred.
Yeah, I mean like a guy who just gets signed off of the street to say that
it was a little weird.
It's a little much, but I mean at the same time, everyone in that locker room probably like adored watching Adrian Peterson 10 years ago when he was first on the scene, so maybe they're okay with it. It's like, dude, I just got undressed by Adrian Peterson.
Hey, how good did it feel to get a blowout win?
Yeah,
I thought it was a very. It was. I felt like it was so close to like all of a sudden like one mistake would just change the game, but it happened to be that the Jaguars kept making all the mistakes. Like it didn't like it's a big win because it was 31-7. But before that weird onside kick return for our touchdown was 24-7, even though there was only like a minute left, I felt like that game was always on the cusp of being closer than it seemed, just because the Jaguars are just terrible.
Well, they were awful, but I feel like we had the game pretty well in hand.
Yeah, like I feel yeah, Sammy, you may have a little bit of like battered Seahawks fan syndrome going on there.
A little PTSD.
Yeah, what I think it was is like I felt like the Jaguars never looked really bad until they lost Robinson. Like once they lost their running back, like I kind of felt like, oh yeah, they really have nothing to show for it.
They don't have a head coach.
Well, that's like a whole nother issue. Like, if you've gone to the website to hawkscast.net, you've seen me basically say multiple times that I think Urban Meyer is a fraud at the NFL level. Great college coach, but controlling a room of paid professionals is very different from controlling a room of amateur athletes who don't get anything close to the power that they do in the NFL.
And and then winning games when your roster's built with the same amount of salary cap as everybody else versus recruiting and you end up with like all the best athletes from the East Coast over and over and over again. Yeah, it's a little harder, isn't it? I mean,
it's not only harder in that fact, but the game is just different, right? I mean, in the NFL, you could like we've seen this because we've had teams like this. This happened last weekend. Week 9 was like the weirdest week of football because the Bills lost to the Jaguars. We just undressed the Jaguars at the end of the game. Again, I didn't feel like it all the way through. But Seahawks undressed the Jaguars. The Jaguars held the Bills to 6 points, and they won 6-9. That's so rare to happen in college football because you hear about it like once or twice a year where there's like some FCS school that comes out of nowhere and beats like a, top 50 school because that happens. Like that happened this year. Montana, which had never beaten UW in 100 years, beat UW. But it's probably not going to happen for another 100 years.
That says a lot about UW, but
that's
Jaguars, but yeah.
But the likelihood of that happening again is so rare. Whereas the Jaguars have 2 wins now. The Giants have 3 wins. There's a bunch of teams that we all consider to be quite terrible, but they have wins against reputable teams. The Falcons are the 7th seed if the playoffs started today. So the Jags are awful though, really really bad. But they've won 2 games.
When they scored their touchdown and they went for an extra point, like that's, I mean, like I don't want to say, well, yeah, I do. Like that's like giving up. I don't know. Like that's, you have to go for 2, right?
I mean, I don't think it matters at that point.
It doesn't matter,
weird.
but you
It's
can't-
weird because it's weird that they wouldn't go for 2, but they would go for the onside kick.
Well, you have to go for 2 because if you go for 2 and you make it, in theory, it's a 2-score game.
Yeah, and this is maybe again why I think Urban Meyer is kind of a bad coach, because that inconsistency, you'd say like, look, we're going to lose this game, but here is our chance to put up the best fight, and it would be to go for 2 and then to go for an onside kick, which they did not do, right?
Right. I don't know if it's like he's just never. I mean, did Urban Meyer ever was he ever in a close game in college?
I don't watch a lot of college football, so I can't say. The thing that I enjoyed the most was the fact that they had 12 men on the field 3 times. They had to burn a timeout once, and they got penalized for it twice. I forget what happened on the 3rd time they had 12 men. I think they got them off of the field quick enough. But to have that happen to your team 3 times is just a really, really bad sign. It's a sign of bad coaching, because you have dedicated people on the bench helping you guys on and off the field.
Did you see in the second half, maybe a third, maybe more than a third of the time, he didn't have his headset on anymore. Urban Meyer was essentially pouting.
Yeah,
He was pouting.
Yeah, I mean,
And
maybe
that dude. Yeah.
I feel one thing I do want to kind of point out as well is in this game, credit to Geno Smith, he went 12 for 13, and he went 12 for 12 targeting Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. There was one pass I think he went to Freddie Swain, and it was too high of a pass, and it just kind of sailed on everybody. But credit the Seahawks offense for saying, look, we're going to get the ball to our playmakers. It's DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf had 2 great touchdowns. And people want to pick on Shaquille Griffin because he signed a big contract with the Jaguars. But those were the first 2 touchdowns that he's given up all year. So credit to the Seahawks, Shane Waldron, Geno Smith, DK, and Tyler for saying, look, we are going to take advantage and we are going to target our playmakers. And they did that, so credit to them. I didn't think they had it in them.
Yeah, it was good. And seeing, DK didn't get a bunch of yards, but both his touchdown passes or receptions were great. That one, seeing him go up and snatch the ball out of the air like that with his hands that's the kind of thing that I've been wanting to see more of out of him. That's the kind of thing we need from him. That's the kind of thing that's going to make him the top tier wide receiver that he wants to be. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and the thing that I think was most amazing is none of those throws were over 20 yards. All of them were kind of in that medium level throw that almost any quarterback can make. So credit to Geno for having a great game. It was the only win in the Russell Wilson absence, but I think that was really positive. Last unofficial topic, we got to talk about Odell Beckham Jr. What are your guys' thoughts? I put some thoughts on the website, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the podcast.
I'm pretty simple with it. I would not be mad if they were able to bring him in for the rest of the season. I don't want them signing him to any kind of long-term deals or throwing a bunch of money at him or anything like that. But I think it could be fun and definitely interesting to have him on the squad this season to see what happens.
Russ is contemplating, I feel like. His silence says so many.
Early on, I was super, super anti this idea. I think I'm warming to it, not because I think it's some amazing thing, but we didn't do anything at the trade deadline, which is kind of a little bit weird. And we're right on that 3 and 5. You don't want to throw too much at this year. The way the cap works this year is any money we don't spend this year, we get to use next year. So you might want to roll some money over. But at the same time, we're 3 and 5, but we're getting a little better, I feel. We beat the Jaguars only, but the other 2 games, it felt like if Russ had been in there, maybe we win those. And all of a sudden, you're saying we're 5 and 3. And I don't know. There's no dominant team in the NFL this year, or at least in the NFC. I don't think. And so maybe this is a year you want to just roll a little bit of dice with, take a little bit of a chance to go, see what OBJ does for us. And I don't think, again, I'm really nervous. Like, the running game isn't the same when Chris Carson's not there. He may not always be there, as we talked about. You can't really trust his availability. So, and Penny isn't Penny. The other guys are just guys. They're not bad. But I just feel like another weapon, if we're going to have to throw, it's not very often you can pick up somebody that good at that time. Now, some people say he's not that good at all anymore. Some people say he's not motivated anymore. I don't necessarily agree with that. I do think he can be motivated. I still think he's actually good. I don't think at his age he's forgotten how to be a great wide receiver. I just think he's not been in great situations. He's a little bit of he's more than a bit of a diva, and he's a bit of a, those kind of, I don't think he's got a great, he's not Rocky Balboa. Heart is not his strength. I think things have to go right for him to play his best. But having the chance to play with Russell Wilson, somebody that caliber for the first time in his career, who's throwing a great deep ball, maybe the best in the NFL right now, I think that would motivate him, and it might be interesting to see. I have some reservations, but I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote on Hawkscast.net that I'm indifferent. They don't have to spend a lot of money because he was on the Browns for week 1, so his entire salary for the year is guaranteed. So if he doesn't play for any team, the Browns are still paying him. So you could sign him for the league minimum, and the Browns have to cover the rest of his contract. So monetarily, there's not necessarily incentive unless he wants more money from a particular team, or a team says hey, we're going to sign you to a 2-year deal. Anything over his contract?
I was surprised nobody at all picked him off of waivers.
I think if you claim him on waivers, you have to take over his entire contract for the year, so you are fully responsible for his contract.
Yeah, $7.5 million. We had space for it. I thought we were going to do it.
I think from just a salary cap to spend that much money on a guy that you can't even guarantee you're going to get the rest of the year out of, I think that's why no one claimed him. And I think he also made it clear that, look, I don't want to play for everyone. I will play for certain teams, otherwise I'll just shut it down. So there was probably a little bit of risk or fear from teams saying if we claim this guy, we're stuck with him, and there's no hope. Because if you claim as a free agent halfway through the year, you only have to pay him for as long as he's on your roster. So you could sign him right now, cut him in a few weeks if he doesn't work out, and you're only responsible for the time that he's on the roster.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that there's probably there's all that's true, but if you fear somebody else might take him, but you kind of actually want him, then you can't take that gamble. You can't.
I think yes.
We don't want to pay the full $7.5.
Yes, if he was such a commodity, if Odell Beckham Jr. was that much of a commodity, he would have been gone for a 6th or 7th round pick at a minimum, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. We've gone through. We're now on the 3rd layer. The trade is difficult because he's shown that maybe he just won't play. So the trade I kind of understand. If we want to trade him, but the teams that offered stuff he didn't want to go to, then they won't do it because he's not one of those players that goes, okay, I'll just play wherever I go.
Right.
But then you get to the waivers, and maybe that was a bit of it too. Maybe there was some of the teams really did want him, but figured he just wouldn't show up or wouldn't play, so they didn't. But it's a little. I mean, you're at the 3rd level of not wanting him, and what does that say?
Was there even many teams that could have afforded to?
A 1/3 of teams had space to sign him. A 1/3.
I mean, and you're looking at the ability to roll that cap over to next year.
Well, that's the thing. That means teams are really saying, rather than having Odell Beckham on our team, we'd rather have extra money next year. That says a lot compared to what he used to be, right?
Yeah, because there's a very, very good wide receiver hitting the market next year in Devonte Adams. So,
and if everybody thinks he sucks that bad, maybe he's not even worth bringing in. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'd like to be in the NFL office and have connections so you can talk to people, see what the thinking was. Was it just, hey, we think we can get a better deal and it's going to work better as a free agent and we were pretty sure nobody was going to take him? Or is it, everybody just sees him as too much trouble now. I mean, like,
I would have to think that teams are trying to play it both ways. They're going to say, like, we don't need him. He's a luxury. But if he falls to us, let's take a look. Because I feel like that's where it is now that he's a free agent. He's saying, like, yeah, I'm talking to a couple teams. People are pitching me. You know, Sean Payton of the New Orleans Saints is reaching out. Russell Wilson from our Seahawks are reaching out. So there's definitely that investment from players. Pete Carroll has been very kind of like coy about the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like he's going to sign with any team this week. And if he does, it'll be a very quick turnaround, because if he signs with Green Bay, he could potentially play. If he signs with Seattle, potentially he could play. So Tony chiming in on the chat saying that he heard that the Pack offered the league minimum, which is basically to Odell Beckham Jr., it's the same amount of money he's going to get. Like, a team doesn't have to offer him much more than the minimum because the Browns are paying the rest of it. So it really comes down to, like, who does he want to play for? He's got his money taken care of for this year. It's just like, who do I want to play for Odell?
Well, I suspect, because a lot of these players aren't really realistic about their own value, I suspect he's kind of hoping somebody gives enough money that he basically double dips.
I would find it hard to believe that there's a team out there that's willing to pay him more than the $7 million that he's owed this year.
I find it hard to believe, and you find it hard to believe, but he doesn't live in our reality, man.
True. Like, I mean, I'm not living in an Odell Beckham world. I'm not that kind of player, that physique, that person. So yeah, I mean, it's hard.
We constantly see players completely overestimate their value, right? Like Bell, right? Bell, who used to be for
Le'Veon Bell.
When he finally ended up with the Jets, after all was said and done, he ended up costing himself like $12 million over 2 years. Between his problems with the Pittsburgh Steelers and what he finally actually signed for versus his offer, yeah, he cost himself millions and millions of dollars. So that's never coming back.
We got to wrap up, but the final thought that I have on this is, yes, Tony says also a lot of ego. A lot of these players have always been betting on themselves their whole career. So I don't think it's that much of a stretch to think that they can continue to do that. It's sad that in football especially, you see players just kind of fall off of a cliff talent-wise just because it is such a taxing sport. The reason why I'm not really invested in Odell Beckham Jr. is because he is older now and he's coming off shoulder surgery and all those things. I don't think are going to be a problem from a Seahawks standpoint or a chemistry standpoint. It's just going to be like, we're already dealing with enough injuries. Why would we want to add another potential injury-prone player? We got to move ahead. We got topics to talk about. The Seahawks complete their bye week with the return of a healthy Russell Wilson, Carson and Dee Eskridge. The team took care of the lowly Jaguars before the bye. After a long 3 games, RQB comes back to lead the team as they travel to Green Bay, where the Seahawks have not won since John Kitna and Mike Holmgren won in 1999 in our AFC West days. The buzz is increasing as there's still question about Aaron's availability for Sunday's game, as he needs a negative test on Saturday night to play on Sunday. And the Seahawks are looking as healthy as they've ever been. But will that be enough to change their losing streak in Green Bay? This is the Hawkscast.net podcast. I am Sam. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross. And Zeb, I'm going to start you off with topic number 1. And I want to know, how have your thoughts about Russ's position within the team changed in his absence? A lot of opinions about what we were hoping to see with Geno, what the offense would look like. We saw 3 weeks of what that looks like. Has your position with Russ changed at all, seeing what a Russ-less Seahawks can look like?
It's difficult because there's that part of me that thinks Russ is going to come back and just kill. Which obviously I think we all hope is what's going to happen, but there's kind of no evidence to show us that that's what's going to happen. It's not like he was balling out of control while he was healthy. You know what I mean? We things were pretty rocky, and there was reason for people to be interested in seeing what Geno can do. But after seeing what Geno can do, I think we pretty much know what his limits are. He had a great game against the Jaguars, but you better have a great game against those Jaguars. You know what I mean? And you can't help but feel like Russell is probably enough of a difference to get those wins against Pittsburgh and New Orleans. So I feel like Russell is still the leader of this offense, and that getting him back should give us a boost. And I feel like the defense is playing at a higher level at this point. And so I definitely am optimistic about turning this season around and fighting for a playoff spot.
If you were to imagine like a scale and it was representative power between Russ and the Seahawks management, do you think that scale has tipped more in Russ's favor or in the Seahawks' favor, or is it still kind of a 50-50 going into the rest of this year?
I don't know that it's changed much during this season. It's obviously changed quite a bit the last couple of seasons, but I don't think. I don't know. I feel like I think probably a lot of people agree that an Odell Beckham signing would be kind of a Russell signing, right? So I guess if we see that happen, then that's probably Pete in the front office trying to appease him a little bit, and then I could definitely say that's the scales have tipped his way a little bit. But I don't think much has changed just based on his injury or him being gone for a couple of games. We know who Russell is. Pete knows who Russell is. I don't know that things are all that different.
Ross, what about you? Have you had any shift in change in your perception of Russ's position with his team? How he's looked at, how he's viewed, how maybe fans even look at him?
Not really. I was one of those people that had delusions of grandeur, and Geno Smith's going to come in, and not that he's going to be amazing, because he's not. Nobody in the world is ever going to say that Geno Smith is better than Russell Wilson. But, yeah, there was some thought or some hope or some whatever, 10 years of the same stuff. I think we all were kind of doing something a little bit different. And then you get it, and you're like, oh, yeah. We're pretty awesome with what we had. Because Geno, I don't want to talk bad about Geno. Geno is Geno, and you know what you're getting is the backup quarterback. Although I do wonder if maybe we need to get a slightly better quarterback with more upside. But as far as Russ goes, I mean, it didn't really show me anything as oh, see, we really, really do need him. He hides all the warts, because this wasn't a really fair simulation of what the team looks like without Russ. Because this team, as we said before, this is the team that built around Russ. It's the salary structure still includes Russ. This isn't what the team would look like without Russ. If we traded Russ for 3 first-rounders and had $35 million more in cap space, we wouldn't be keeping Geno Smith. We wouldn't just, not use the first-round picks or use them all on, Rashad Penny. Hopefully. So I mean, it wasn't a fair simulation, but yeah, I mean, it can't help but have you appreciate Russ a little bit more. I still have doubts whether with the current structure of the team we can ever get to the Super Bowl again. We're investing that much, But I mean, no doubt it does make me appreciate Russ. Although I mean, watching Geno Smith awkwardly throw 12 completions in a row. Hey, cool. It shows you that there are quarterbacks out there. If you decided to invest purely in the offensive line, maybe $35 million more in the offensive line, given time, any NFL quarterback can complete passes. It's just that when things aren't going right, then you need the stars, right? So
right.
I mean, if Geno Smith has time, or there's no pass rush or whatever, he's an NFL quarterback. He was drafted in the first round for a reason back when.
Second round.
Oh, sorry, second round for a reason. So, yeah, I mean, Geno's Geno.
Yeah.
And, yeah, okay, we're lucky to have Russ, but Russ would, give us a little bit of a hometown discount and get back to, young, hungry, eye of the tiger Russ, not Hollywood, I want to be the best of all time, and that I want the numbers to go with it, Rod. That's just me.
I definitely feel as if, depending on where you are in the Russell position within the Seahawks before his injury, it's probably going to greatly influence of what you thought after seeing Geno Smith lead this team for 3 games. There was definitely a strong contention of people that are saying, like, Pete is holding Russ back, and Russ is the reason why we're winning. And I think those voices got a little bit more power seeing the Seahawks go 1-2 because the running game has been pretty poor, but they've definitely run the ball more. But I would rather run poorly than let Geno just continue to throw the ball. I feel like that was a bad scenario. If you were on the Russ is holding the Seahawks back because he takes up too much of our cap and we can't play a Pete Ball style team where we're running the ball constantly and spending a little bit more money on our offensive linemen and our running backs and spending more money on defense, like having that kind of ball control, old style, like Russ in his first year Seahawks, you kind of felt like, well, if we just had a little bit better of a quarterback, 2 of those games were decided by a field goal, and a better quarterback maybe wins you those games because you're only down, it's tied or you're down 3. So I feel like it's a little bit of a litmus test. You can see what you want to see, but ultimately, I don't like. I agree with both of you. I don't think a lot really has changed. I think if anything, there is maybe a better desire to have a better backup than Geno Smith, or at least someone with more upside, as you said, because the limitations that we saw with Geno were he needs a lot more time to process the play or go through his progressions than Russ has. And I don't know if I don't think that's necessarily a knock against Geno, but when he was just going directly to DK and directly to Tyler in that Jags game, he looked a lot better. That was much more similar to what we saw when he came in for Russ in the Rams Thursday night game than what we saw against New Orleans and what we saw against Pittsburgh, where he was just very slow to go through his progressions before he would throw the ball. So maybe that's the change, but we'll see. I'm excited to have Russ back, but now that he's back, we should actually move on to topic number 2. And Ross, I want to know, what will the Seahawks team look like now that Russ returns? My biggest concern is this going to impact the defense?
Did you just call me Russ?
Russ.
Okay. That's like,
Rass.
Bruce?
Rose? I used to get Rose a lot. Anyway, what's the team going to look like? I don't know, man. I think although we lost 2 out of 3, we're surprisingly still kind of in contention. And Russ has shown the way Russ handled his business during the injury kind of indicates that he's still all in with Seattle. I think you can see it that way. And I think that could sort of re-energize things. It's going to be interesting to see how it does work, like you said, Sammy, with the defense, because I feel like the defense was actually making strides while he was out. But is it that because they were running more? And then when Russ comes back, do we keep still running more because it's been working and Pete Carroll was sick of what was happening? Or are we going to go back? I mean, we haven't said the name Shane in weeks now because it's gone the other way, and it's worked sort of, kind of. I don't know. It's going to be really, really interesting to see. I'm interested to see when he comes back. Is it are we still running the Russ offense where he's going to do what he wants to do, and we're going to be more throwy and whatever? I mean, we may be overrating even with the changes. Maybe the biggest change against Jacksonville was a bad center, going with Posick. I think people don't like Posick, and I think Fuller has the better future. But Posick went in there and made the right line calls, and then Geno had time. And with the time, Geno was able to either go to a predetermined receiver or just kept settling on our top 2 receivers, and things worked a lot better. Running game was hard because Posick can't run block as well. It's weird. The rest of our offensive line blocks better for the run, but Posick doesn't. His game really is being the smart dude out there, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like Russ coming back, I'm excited to see what happens, but I have no idea what it's going to look like. Is it going to be that we're running a faster offense again and we score faster again? That puts more pressure on the defense. So overall, it's not much difference because the defense is going to be stressed more, or is it going to be Pete Carroll saying we're still going to run this, but we're still going to win, and Russ is going to be happy, and the defense still holds it together? Or is it going to be the defense steps up and we throw more, but the defense has stepped up so much the more that they're not under that much stress because they get the ball back, and maybe, of all things, maybe we even get turnovers. Remember those? We got even only one against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Anyway, I can't pretend to even know. My guess is that we're not going to be as much better than as we think we were compared to like when Geno Smith is out there. Exactly, because I think we're going to go back to a higher paced offense, which scores a lot faster. The defense is going to be out there a lot more. They're going to be gassed and they're going to give up more points. So we'll win more games, but we're not going to be as much better as you'd expect going from a C+ quarterback to an A. That's my scenario.
Zeb, what about you? What does this return of the Seahawks look like?
It's hard not to get your hopes up thinking about a healthy Russ, a healthy Chris Carson, a healthy Dee Eskridge coming back. Like all those things, if that's all legit and that's all true and everybody's good to go, it feels like a big boost in talent on offense, right? And then like Ross said, maybe Posick makes that offensive line better, and all those things combined, it makes me feel like we might come out and start steamrolling some teams. Now, obviously, that's the starry-eyed, hopeful, optimistic fan view. Is that what's going to happen? I don't know. Hard to say. But I like it. And looking at this team, this roster, like we've barely even tapped into Gerald Everett yet at this point, and I think like really having Everett out there, him and DK are very similar in size and skill set. It's hard to kind of imagine why we haven't been able to take advantage of that more than we have. And I know, everything's with Russell has been weird and iffy and wishy-washy these last couple of seasons, but I know for a fact that man likes to win. And I really do believe it's the most important thing to him. So I kind of expect this team to take it up a notch or two and really put us into a position to, like I said earlier, to be fighting for a playoff spot here at the end of the year.
I think it's going to be really interesting because I think you're right, Zeb, that, ultimately Russ does want to win, and his mindset of how he's going to win and kind of legacy and all that kind of stuff, it's definitely shifted what he said, but at the core of it, like Russ said, he's with the team, he's on the field, he's practicing, he's doing all the things that you would want to see a guy do and not be a distraction to the team. Now, obviously, there are people out there that are going to critique Russ no matter what he does, but I think I'd like to see him with the team than not. Now, in regards to what the offense is going to look like and that impact of the defense, that's a big question mark for me. I really don't know. Like, we've never seen Russ come back from missing a game. So it would be great to think that he is going to play as good, if not better, be more motivated coming back from an injury, but we really don't know what that's going to be like. For all accounts from the media and the press, from the local beat reporters, is that, Russ looks good. He's not getting as many reps as, he would normally because, they're trying to ease him back into things. But everyone's kind of saying like, he looks like his old self. Like there's not really been a change. He's obviously working out. Obviously with his finger injury, it probably limited his grip opportunities. But for the most part, everyone says he's looking good, which I think is a positive. I'm more interested to see what happens with Dee Eskridge and Chris Carson. Dee Eskridge, obviously, Hasn't played since week 1. Chris Carson, he hasn't played since I think week 4. And they potentially have a greater impact because when we saw them on the field together, that's when Shane Waldron looked the most dynamic. That's when the offense looked the most dynamic. And I've been giving him a ton of grief, the offensive coordinator, all year, saying, like, why is the offense so much predicated on these two players? Like, isn't there something that you can implement that is still similar without having Chris Carson run it or Dee Eskridge run it? And Pete said yes, but Shane has shown that he has not been able to call those kind of plays. In regards to how this impacts the defense, I'm hoping that the fact that Trey Brown is back and Trey and DJ Reed are playing on the outside at corner, that's really just solidified our secondary a little bit better. But we'll see. We're as healthy as we've ever been on defense and on offense, and I'm hoping that that's what we see this game on Sunday, because maybe this is going to be our best shot with or without Aaron Rodgers on the other side. Final thoughts?
You guys keep talking about Dee Eskridge. Is that confirmed he's playing this week?
He's practicing, so it's like the closest hope I have to him playing.
I still worry about that dude. Like, his first career concussion knocks him out for 9 weeks.
Yes.
That's not great.
And the fact that he missed preseason because of another injury. So, yeah.
That's not great either.
Yeah.
But, like, especially the concussion thing, because those tend to get progressively worse. So, if this is your first one, holy crap, dude.
Not great. Not great. That's for sure.
Yeah. What was that guy who ended up playing tight end for the Washington? Reed?
Yeah, Jordan.
That dude, like, had 2 or 3 concussions a year, right? And so he was only available 1/3 of the time. That was awful. What if we have that situation already?
It would
hopefully
be pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm not excited for that to watch that play out, because I think I've read this book before.
All right. Well, let's move on to topic number 3, the Hawkscast Corner. This one's a little bit not Seahawks focused, but I feel like because we're coming off a bye week, maybe we all watched a little bit more NFL games. Zeb, between the taunting rule and the COVID protocol, could the NFL have a worse week?
I mean, it's been rough, but the NFL is such a juggernaut at this point. I don't know that they're gonna brush this kind of stuff off. Obviously, COVID, having one of your golden boys in A-Rod be the center of attention in this negative manner is not something the NFL wants. But I'm not watching a ton of media, so I don't know how it's been, what the response has been, what the coverage has been like. But obviously, he's been, on a lot of people's, a lot of people are talking about what's going on, and there's been a lot of jokes and a lot of memes and things like that. But he's Aaron Rodgers, so when he's cleared to play again, he's going to come back and play, and it's going to be water under the bridge, I imagine. And this COVID thing, it's kind of been weird, and who knows how much worse it could get this season. Hopefully not. We talked about this a lot at the beginning of the year, how now that we're kind of back to, we've lessened the restrictions, there's the chance that the COVID could have more of an effect on this season than it did on last year's, ultimately. And we haven't necessarily seen that yet. In fact, we haven't seen it. Have we seen any games be postponed or rescheduled or anything like that? I don't think we've seen any, right?
Yeah, there haven't been enough of an outbreak, but there have definitely been a bunch of teams like the Browns lost their running back room.
Lots of players and coaches, but ultimately they've been able to play the games, and it hasn't had that kind of an effect. The taunting thing is funny because, I honestly, the spirit of the rule as I think it's meant to be, I appreciate. I love celebrations, and I love players getting pumped up and all that stuff. But I don't really like when they're just downright mean to each other. Like, that kind of bothers me a little bit. So I appreciate what I think they're trying to do, but they have gone way overboard in how they're handling this. And to me, it's not. It's making nothing but had a negative effect on the game. And what happened with Cassius Marsh and Tony Corrente the other night was just weird. I don't understand what was really going on there. But what Cassius Marsh did to me is there's no reason why that should be a penalty.
What did Cassius Marsh do to you?
Well, exactly. He did nothing to me, and I don't think he did anything to anybody else worthy of it hurting his team and his team's chance to win that game, especially after the big play that he had. It's a stupid thing. I understand wanting to get these certain kind of things out of the game, but it's dumb that it affects the whole team and it affects the outcome of games. It's just overboard. And they'll correct it. They will do it, but for right now we have to live with it, and it sucks.
Yeah. Real quick, Tony chiming in. He says, Ross, you have a concussion story. He also says that Marsh got jobbed. But Ross, what's going on with the taunting rule and the COVID protocol? Is the NFL going to be able to self-correct before the end of the year?
I don't think they will, because like Zeb said, they could just brush everything off. But any common sense tells you that on Wednesday night for you guys, Thursday for me, we shouldn't still be talking about a referee. We shouldn't know a referee's name. We shouldn't be talking about a referee 3-4 days later. It shouldn't happen. If you've got a situation where you're talking about that means you've done something wrong. The game should be decided by the players and by their skill and by their ability. Even them keeping the cool, because it's not like Cassius Marsh lost his cool. He didn't do anything he doesn't do in any other situation. And for that play, at that moment, in that game, in that situation, that dude should be able to be happy for 5 seconds. He should. I mean, that dude, his play was probably going to decide the game. And that dude has a right to be happy. Now, I'm an old school dude. I'm all about, Steve Largent scoring his touchdowns and just tossing the ball to the umpire. I'm all about that. But I'm also, that dude, there's only 17 games a year. And you just probably won a game for your team. Yeah, you know what? You can be happy. You can be happy. He wasn't out of control. He wasn't doing anything that was going to have a possibility to instigate some violence later on. He was happy. Let the dude be happy.
Tony Corrente is a big believer in the no fun league. Let me tell you, because the whole story between Tony Corrente and the interviews that happen, and he does the NFL referees don't get interviewed by members of the media. There's members of the NFL team that will ask the referees questions, and because referees rarely determine an outcome of the game, no one cares about their quotes. But specifically, Tony Corrente said that I saw he made a posturing move against the Steelers bench and he felt that it was warranted. And what's weird is Tony Corrente, all he can see is Cassius Marsh's back, because Marsh is looking toward the bench. He's at the hash marks, but he's not saying anything. He can't tell if Marsh is giving the bird or whatever. Cassius Marsh just got cut by the Steelers. That's the only reasons why he was on the Browns, or the Bears, I mean. And Chris Sims on NBC Sports actually shared a story that Tony Corrente is the official, because in his experience, when he was playing for San Francisco, he got hit, and he said he felt it was way after the ball was thrown. He got hit, and he said, "Where's my MFing flag for for a late hit, roughing the passer?" And in the second half of the game, the head referee tells you, "All right, I'm going to run the play clock," so that way the quarterback knows when they can start their huddle, when they can get the play in, and then when they can line up. And he said Tony Corrente didn't let him know, so he asked him after the second or third time it happened on the field, and then Tony Corrente told him, "Are you going to apologize for what you said to me?" And that's when Chris Sims realized, oh man, he is knowingly not providing his service as a head official because he's got something against what I said to him.
Yeah, that's a serious problem.
Yeah, and if you have to think about when Chris Sims was playing, like, that was a while ago. So
A long time ago.
It's weird that we even have to talk about it. And my biggest issue with the taunting thing is that while the NFL has told players and has told teams, we're in week 9, teams still don't have a clear understanding of what that is. And that's a problem. That's a problem that the NFL has done and created by not allowing their players, their product, to understand the limitations of that. Like, what the officials should be doing is like, hey, here's a warning. I'm not going to flag you, but that kind of behavior, you're going to get a taunting flag. And he could issue that to both teams. Like, the head official could say, like, heads up, we're pausing the game right now. I'm telling you, both teams, both head coaches, that's an example of taunting, and if we see that again, the next time it happens, doesn't matter who, that's a 15-yard penalty. That would be the appropriate way to do it, and then that way there's no excuse on the players. But I feel like every time a taunting rule gets called against a player now, even through week 9, they're shocked because they don't understand what happened or what they did to instigate it. The COVID thing, I think if anything, it's just shown that the NFL is only about optics, about trying to present a safe environment as opposed to actually creating a safe environment. Because the teams are the ones that are supposed to monitor their own players, which is a terrible rule because the Packers obviously knew that Aaron Rodgers wasn't vaccinated, and he used very coded, lawyery words to try and make it sound like he was earlier in the offseason. He's supposed to wear an armband that represents whether he is vaccinated or not. Reporters have gone back and looked, and he was not wearing a coded, colored armband that represents his vaccination status. He got basically a small slap on the wrist. DK Metcalf was fined, I think, almost as much as Aaron Rodgers was for breaking COVID protocol. And DK didn't know you couldn't hug the goalpost, and that's why he got a flag. So I think the NFL is going to get more heat in the long term for the COVID issue because now teams, reporters are going to be more in tune with it. They're going to be looking for it more, and they're going to force teams to address it. The taunting thing, like Zeb said, I think the NFL is just going to let it roll, and I think we'll quietly hear that it gets changed next year. But I really don't see how it's helping the game. I don't see how it is stopping that kind of behavior because I don't think NFL players understand what is going to be flagged because it's more of an interpretation than something that's completely objective.
I mean, I think I slightly disagree on the last part. I mean, I think compared to early in the season, everybody knows, like, you can still even be excited, you can do whatever, but you basically, before you do anything, after you make a big play, turn 90 degrees to your left. So you're facing the... No, like, if you just do that, then all of a sudden they don't call it taunting. If you're making eye contact or looking at somebody, you do something that's bad. Cassius March, he was looking at the bench, but the bench is a half mile away, and he's not, like, taunting them. He's just happy.
He's standing there. He's standing there, and he got flagged for his posture.
Yeah, it's dumb. And that's the thing. Like, even if you're saying, "Hey, I get the taunting, and I want the taunting calls in there, whatever," you probably, in that case, you almost have to make the exception because you can't have such a ticky-tack call decide a game. It can't come down to that. You can't. A referee can't insert themselves into the game, and that's clearly what he did. I mean, by the fact that we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't call it at all, and later on you realize you should have, so then you give a warning. That would be so much better. You shouldn't have people literally talking about the ref 3 days later. But if any situation you're doing that, you know you've done something really, really wrong.
If Tony Corretti had just blown his whistle and said, like, this is an official warning, Cassius Marsh, move your ass, get back to your sideline so we can run the next play. Next time something like that happens, both teams, it's a 15-yard penalty. He would have been a hero because everyone said, oh, I clearly understand what would happen in this close game on a primetime game where the entire nation is watching. That would have made him a referee hero, but instead he's taken all the heat because he inserted himself into the game, he like did this weird hip check thing to Cassius Marsh, which is super weird.
Really weird.
Yeah,
Really weird. Weird.
Yeah,
What a weirdo.
but
Not all heroes wear stripes.
yeah.
I think taunting. If you want to have a rule about taunting, I think it should be in like fining players, not penalizing their teams. It just doesn't make sense to me unless you go like crazy overboard. It just doesn't make sense.
And like, I don't know if you have to go that far, but I think you could say like you should give a team at least an official warning, like rather than just immediately go to a flag that results in a penalty or a conversion of a first down, because that's one of my biggest problems with the way that this rule is being applied. It is more likely to happen on a third down call because those are so much more important than a sack or play happening on first and second down, you know? Right. I feel like because it's going to more likely happen on a third down call, it's going to turn the tide against your team. And I feel like that's such a bad thing. Tony chiming in saying like he gave all Tonys a bad name, and I think that's correct. You know.
Tony, you're doing a good job yourself with that.
Tony
doing a good job. Tony Soprano, all those guys.
Yeah. We do have to move ahead because we do have to talk about the upcoming opponent, and it is topic number 4. It is the Green Bay Packers. So Ross, I got a question for you. Why have the Seahawks been unable to beat the Packers in Green Bay? We have to go back to 1999. We've beaten the Packers in Seattle plenty of times, but we're talking about Matt Hasselbeck, Seneca Wallace, Russell Wilson versus Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and a little bit of Matt Flynn. And Seattle hasn't won in Green Bay. What's going on? Why is it such a problem? And you've been to a Green Bay game too.
With Tony.
Shout out Tony.
Brett Favre's last playoff home game as a Packer. We were there. Snowball.
Was that the game where the Seahawks were up 14-0?
Yeah.
And it started snowing, and then the game just fell apart.
Disaster.
They were up 14-0 with just about 5 minutes into the game. A guy behind me to the left threatened to put my Seahawk 12th man flag in an uncomfortable place. It was funny because up to that point, Green Bay fans had been the most gracious, coolest, most secure in their fanhood fans I've ever seen. Like, we had walked around the game beforehand around the stadium, and everybody was super nice to us and bought us drinks. I did a radio interview for a minute and a half or 2 or something, and it was cool. And then the Seahawks started dominating, and like people were remarkably less friendly. And then the Seahawks brought the wrong cleats, and by halftime we couldn't see the other side of the stadium, and we got our butts kicked. But the man who had threatened me, his wife made him apologize to me.
Nice. That's worth it, right?
Yeah. So we all made nice, and we went home just disappointed. After we went to a sausage factory or sausage store the next day that Tony spent an inordinate amount of time at. I tried that trick that all fathers do everywhere. When you're with the wife and they're taking too long, so you say you're gonna go wait in the car because you think that's gonna put pressure on them, but it's exactly the opposite. Like, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. Tony spent like an hour and a half at a sausage store. I swear to God.
I feel like that's coded language, but I'll take it at your face value.
No, it was a legit. Apparently, they don't have as many sausages in Seattle as they have in Green Bay, which isn't surprising. Anyway. It was cool though. Anyway, so we can't win there because first of all, you kind of named it. Like, they've had 2 back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and that's the deciding position in the NFL. They've got a really good home field advantage, especially once it hits November, December, because it's outdoors and it's cold and it's snowy. It's hard to play in, and that goes a long way. Hasselbeck was really good, but Favre is better. And Russ is good, but probably Aaron Rodgers. They have different strengths, but it's probably about a time most of their career, and so it comes down to whoever's playing at home. We tend to beat them at home, and they tend to beat us in their home. So, and plus it doesn't happen that often, right? Every 8 years or something, we play them, except for playoff games. So we haven't had that many opportunities. But yeah, they've got good quarterbacks. They've had really good coaches in the past. Go back to the 80s, and I bet we had a lot more success. But, back when they were having Lynn Dickey, they went through a really bad time. 70s and 80s, they were a pretty horrible team.
Dude, they were bad for a while, man.
Yeah, so it's only once they got Brett Favre and Mike Holmgren together that they found a lot of success again. But, again, they've had a really good coach and they've had really good quarterbacks and they've got a great home field advantage, especially in winter, and I think that's probably 90% of it. Plus, there's just not that many opportunities. But this weekend will be different.
I like it. Zeb, if you had to give a reason as to why Seattle can't win in Green Bay, I'd love to hear it. Because while Ross's point is true, it is hard to win in Green Bay, Wisconsin at the time of year that they play. The Seahawks have played them throughout the year. They've played them in the early part of the year. They've played them later in the part of the year. They haven't had the best success. What's going on? What needs to happen?
Well, we have to score more points than they do. But Ross is right about all of it. Obviously, Lambeau is it's a tough environment to play in for multiple reasons. It's a legendary location. I'm sure there's some weight to that to a lot of players, younger players especially. It's just one of those places. It's tough to play for just about anybody, I imagine. We've beat them there 3 times. In 84, in 1990, and then in 1999. That's it.
Yeah.
So, and we say over the years we haven't played them very frequently there, but recently, we've played 4 of the last 5 games at Green Bay since 2015. You know what I mean? It's almost every year we've gone to Green Bay, with the exception of 2018 where they came to Seattle, and in 2019 where we didn't play them. So it's like you guys have both said, it's gone across eras, across regimes, different coaches, different quarterbacks. So I don't know that it's a thing really, but on paper it sure looks like one. I think it's going to be pretty big whether we're looking at playing Aaron Rodgers or whether we're looking at playing Love. That's going to be a huge factor, and I think probably Rodgers is going to play. So I do expect a close, hard-fought game, and hopefully we can buck the trend and pull one out.
It's weird to think about how historically difficult it has been for Seattle to play a team like the Packers, where they can beat the Packers at home in very weird ways. There's a Hail Mary, there's an NFC Championship game, there's the home opener. There's a full gamut of the style of games that the Seahawks have won at home. But whenever it seems like they go to Green Bay, there's just not that magic. And it's very well could be like you said. Lambeau is just like a magical place, and having these back-to-back high-caliber quarterbacks just give them an edge that Seattle is unable to take advantage of. I think what will be really interesting is going to be the matchup of, obviously, who's going to be their quarterback. Most likely it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but Devonte Adams. Devonte Adams has had field days against Seattle. The last time he played Seattle, I think he caught 8 passes for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that is not a good thing. That's pretty terrible when you think about what our defense is doing. And Devonte Adams and Aaron Rodgers, they just kind of had a field day. So I think that's the biggest question going into this game. What can Trey Brown, DJ Reed, Quandre Diggs, and Jamal Adams, and maybe, Marquise Blair or Ugo Amadi, whoever, or, Ryan Neal, whoever's going to be lining up there. I forget which one got injured. Who's going to be the one helping and making sure that he's limited? because they have other people, but they also have a lot of injuries. They have Marquise Scandling, Valdez Scandling. They have Randall Cobb, their tight end, who it's their only pass catching tight end. He's out for the year. Aaron Jones is a really good running back, but I don't know if Seattle can't find a way to slow down Devonte Adams. I don't know what chance they have.
Trey Brown, man. Trey Brown all day.
QB.
I mean, I'm okay with that if that's what it takes, but we'll see, right?
I'm kind of stoked after watching a couple of review things this week. I'm kind of really excited for Trey Brown now. Fourth round pick. I forgot he was fourth round, but I keep thinking of him as like a second or third. But he's fourth round, but he's playing great.
Yeah.
I think that dude plus a little bit of defensive philosophy mix up, and then with DJ Reed on the other side, so that back where he plays best, that's probably the biggest factor in the defense turning around, and that's plus a few more plays for my boy Ryan Neal.
Always, right? So just a quick
huge Ryan Neal stan.
Here's a couple of the latest injury report. So Kenny Clark, limited practice. Their tight end did not practice. Another defensive lineman has a concussion, limited practice. Tackle, limited practice. Defensive line, Dean, full practice.
Which tackle? Bakhtiari?
No, Bakhtiari is supposed to come back, but he has not been activated yet. He's still on IR, I believe. And then their corner, Eric Stokes, he was limited to practice. So, we have like our entire veteran core got veteran rest, like Dwayne Brown, Gabe Jackson, Carlos Dunlap. So, we'll see how that goes. But a lot of guys are full practice. This is really the healthiest we've been. Brandon Shell is back, which is great. He's a full practice. Same with DJ Reed. Sidney Jones is a full practice. So, like I said, this is probably the healthiest that Seattle has been all year. And we'll see if they can take advantage of that.
Yeah, let's stay that way for a little while, please.
Yeah. Final thoughts on the Packers before we move on here.
Packers. No, Pack, no.
All right. And we got some predictions. So a recap from our last episode. Ross had the Jags winning 21-17. I had the Seahawks winning 14-10. And Zeb, with the closest score, had the Seahawks winning 19-15. So a lot of points for the Seahawks. And not a lot of points for the Jaguars, but we're going to give the win to Zeb. So with that in mind, Zeb, what is the final score? Seahawks at Packers. It's a 1 o'clock Pacific time, even though it's going to be like 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Lambeau.
Yeah, afternoon in Lambeau. It's an interesting situation. I'll take the Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks. I'll take them 33-22.
Ooh. Nice points. Ross, what you got?
Seahawks over the Packers 26-25.
Wow. You guys have a little bit more faith than I do. I'm just not feeling great about this game. I'd love to be wrong. But I'm gonna go with the Packers winning. I think I'm gonna go something like
Boo.
I know, but I don't know what to expect out of this team.
I feel I'm a little bit afraid that Aaron Rodgers just comes out just like super pissed off.
Yeah, and like Aaron Rodgers is that kind of a jack off who would like basically like, you know what, I'm going to show everyone here. We're not going to listen to the coach. I'm just going to throw it up and we're going to win and we're going to just like bomb everyone. It's like, and it's going to work because Aaron Rodgers is a really good quarterback. It's kind of a pain to think about, but it's probably why he's as good as he is. He's got a weird like complex. So I'm going to say Packers 28, Seahawks 21.
Ickers be damned.
I know. All right. This is kind of obvious, but Zeb, who's going to start for the Packers? Is it going to be Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers?
Jordan Love.
Ooh. I mean, if it's Jordan Love, I'm changing my prediction. Ross, who you got starting for the Packers?
Brett Favre?
Don Mikowski.
Yeah. Lynn Dickey. I don't want it to be, but it's going to be Aaron Rodgers.
So here's the thing. I also think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. Tony's saying that he hates this guy. The Packers are only a 3-point favorite, so they have a great home field advantage, and they're saying if this were a neutral field, this would be a push. So I wonder if there is like a huge expectation that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to play from the betting world because
he's tested positive, but he's not sick, right?
He has been on the Pat McAfee show twice, and he showed up on Friday, and then he showed up again Tuesday, which is when he normally comes. And he says that he was feeling a little bit down on the weekend, but he's feeling better. He did say he is concerned about how his heart is going to feel, like from a beating standpoint, like if he's going to be fatigued and if like potentially it's going to make it so that it's harder for him to play a full game.
The perception is that people like him just blow it off, but it's not true at all. 2 players last year actually lost their whole season, and I think the Vikings left guard, maybe I'm getting this confused, some other player just went into the hospital today.
Yeah, the Vikings just lost some player, and they're in the hospital due to COVID. So I mean,
they're in the hospital, like hospitalized with it. So it's, I mean, that whole image that like young people always just blow it off if they're in good condition, like that's definitely not true. Like it's so underreported, but literally like 2 players last year lost their whole season. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that's not that many players as a sample. And you're talking about people in their 20s, prime athletes, losing out of seasons. So let's still be a little careful out there, folks, until we get some better treatment.
Aye.
Yeah. All right. Let's see.
Got any other predictions for us?
We do. All right. So just a few over-unders. Over-under 10.5 targets for Devonte Adams. He's averaging about 11.
Over. You know what? I'm going to go under.
Under.
I'm going to go over. I mean, he got, even with Jordan Love, he got 14 targets in that game. He only caught 6 balls, but he got a ton of targets.
He's going to get turf toe
at
halftime. That's why.
That would be something, right? Over under 6.5 targets from one DK Metcalf.
Under.
Over.
Man, I really like the idea of feeding DK. Even if you're giving him like some small short stuff like in the middle of the field, like that's the guy you need to throw it to. I'm gonna say over. Over under 5.5 targets for one Tyler Lockett.
Over.
I kind of feel like the Seahawks have yet to find that perfection of just targeting both of them exclusively, kind of as one or the other, with when Russ has been there. So I'm going to say if DK is over, Tyler is going to be under. Who's going to get the most touches? Chris Carson, Alex Collins, Rashad Penny, or Travis Homer? I'm not even throwing DJ Dallas in there, sorry.
Chris Carson.
Chris Carson, please.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really hopeful for any of these guys. I kind of like Homer because he's such a good pass protector, and even if that means it's obvious that it's a passing play, he's so good at it. And with Posick back, I'm okay if they just like, look, we're gonna go 4 wide or 3 receivers, 1 tight end, but Homer's always there, like helping to block. I'd be okay with that.
Dude, Homer's tight. People hate on Homer, but that dude's tight.
Yeah,
I like Homer. I mean, the other day in our loss, we only had 4 plays of 20 yards or over, and 2 of them for him.
Yeah.
Boom.
That dude's got a little something.
I think if you give him the right opportunity, I think he can definitely do something with it. He's definitely much quicker to just like run and hit whatever hole he's supposed to hit as opposed to what we've seen previously. So credit to him. And the final prediction for the evening, yes or no, is it going to snow in Lambeau? The forecast is high 30s with less than a 20% chance of precipitation, but it is like a 3 o'clock in the afternoon game.
So I guess no.
No snow.
I mean, it's probably not going to snow, but I mean, it'd be kind of cool if it did.
I don't want it to snow. Russ sucks in precipitation.
Russ is not a great outdoor quarterback. I think that's or a bad weather quarterback. I think that is the record we can all agree to. He's not terrible. He's just not great.
He's not super Russ.
No, I think that is fair to say. And gentlemen, that is our predictions, and that is the show for this evening. And now,
that was good.
Shout outs.
Now it's time for some shout outs. Do you guys have any shout outs today?
I do.
Shout out to the fantasy football gods, because apparently I haven't shouted them out enough because they hate me this year. in one league, I have like the 5th or 6th amount, like highest point total, but I'm in last place. I've won 1 game.
That's not in our league, right? That's a different league.
It's not in the league you're in. It's in the keeper. The dynasty league. I've been waiting forever to be in a dynasty league. I'm finally in a dynasty league, and I'm awful at it. I have 1 win. I have no patience that's required for that kind of style of play. I suck, but plus the fantasy football gods hate me. So I'm shouting them out in the hopes of them forgiving me and changing things around a little bit.
Fair enough.
Shout out to Travis Homer. You don't have to be a homer to root for Homer.
I'm down with it. Shout out to Tony for chiming in on the chat. We always appreciate everyone chiming in live because we do record this on twitch.tv every Wednesday during the season. Shout out to Birdfinger for being a great fan. And shout out to all the people on Hawkscast.net. Just sharing the love, being supportive, talking. Sports Hernia is our newest member. He's going by a great name, which is called Let Them Eat Horse Paste. So go to Hawkscast.net. A lot of fun topics out there on sports, politics, and whatever. We are the Hawkscast.net podcast. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross. I am Sam, and we wish you a Go Hawks. Check us out at Twitter, Seahawks Forum, Seahawks Podcast. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks!
Hawks.